the first pick in the draft is going to go to the Portland Trailblazers. As we all know, the draft lottery was a few weeks ago. But I was reading ESPN.com earlier today, and apparently Greg Oden has already been chosen. If you go to their website right now, you can see Greg Oden on their draft tracker has already been picked.
Well, it's no surprise there. I mean, everybody figured that Greg Oden would be the pick no matter how bad he did at his pre-draft workout in Portland. You're still not going to pass up on a 7-foot guy who pretty much played with one hand all season, and it wasn't even his dominant hand. So everybody knows that this is going to happen, so they can just put it up there. They can also put Kevin Durant up for Seattle, so it's not a big deal.
What holes do you see with this Portland Trailblazers team if you're the GM and you're trying to fill some with this draft?
Well, I'm trying to get a legitimate center. I mean, you look at this depth chart, it's a joke as far as the center is concerned. I mean, you've got Joel Prisbilla, you've got Jamal McGlure backing him up.
Well, McGlure is going to be a free agent, so he's gone.
So he's all right. So you throw him out of there, and then you got LaMarcus Aldridge. I don't even think he can play center. So you're definitely looking at Greg Oden to come in there and be the center. You have a guard in Jarrett Jack. You have Brandon Roy, Rookie of the Year, and you had Zach Randolph, who led the team in scoring last season. So you put Greg Oden in there, and you got a pretty good starting lineup.
I see more holes than that with this Portland team. You obviously have the center as a whole, but there's also the point guard problem because they have Sergio Rodriguez, who was a rookie last year, but couldn't beat out Jarrett Jack, who was not a great player himself in his second or third year as a point guard. And you look at small forward, last year it was Ime Udoka or Sudoku or somebody at small forward. And then next year you're also going to have Darius Miles coming back after his microfracture surgery. That's always playing a dangerous game, assuming that someone's going to come back and be a star. They may look to move him, but small forward is a possibility that they need to shore up their benches. Ridiculously bad right now, and they need a shot blocker, but they also need a shooter. And with all that said, I'm throwing a wrench into all this. I'm saying they're gonna pick Kevin Durant. They should pick Kevin Durant. I've said for months that Kevin Durant is the best player in this draft, but that most teams need a center more than they do a small forward. But in the past few days, I've changed from saying that most teams would pick Oden or should pick Oden over Durant to most teams, or just about every team should pick Durant over Oden. And the reason is because recently some injury problems have some medical red flags have flown over the head of Greg Oden, and the wrist problem is still there with Oden. He's able to play. He doesn't have that cast on his wrist or anything like that anymore. But he doesn't have 100% flexibility on that wrist, which is a red flag. And also, he has a bulging disc in his back. Meanwhile, Kevin Durant doesn't have any medical problems outside of the fact that he can't bench press 185 pounds even one time.
That is a damn shame.
That is a shame, but if you got the number one pick overall in the draft, you don't draft the injured player. 814-865-6007 is the number. I want to hear what you fans out there have to say about that. And you, Derek.
Well, as far as Greg Oden being the first pick in the draft, it's going to happen. And you might think that Kevin Durant is the better player. He's obviously he has more athleticism, being that he was a small forward in college. He's obviously not big enough to play that in the NBA. He can't even bench press 185 pounds. Guys are going to be pushing him with their breath. So he's probably going to play the shooting guard position.
Oh, no way he's going to play shooting guard. He's 6'10".
Well, he'll probably play small forward. He won't play power, or he'll just be a swing man, especially if he was on Atlanta. He got 9. So, I mean, he can definitely do that. You know, he can shoot from the outside. And right now, I think when you look at Portland, I think the biggest problem right now is that they need a center. Like you said, they also need a bench because, I mean, you look at Darius Miles, he's underachieved his whole career, and now he just had knee surgery, so he's going to underachieve and complain even more than he did before.
I don't necessarily know that he's going to underachieve because in 2005, the last year that he played, because he was out all the 2006-2007 season, he put up almost 15 points a game, which is not necessarily underachieving unless you think this guy's supposed to be an all-star, which I don't think anybody thinks. You'll take 15 points a game from him. But if you can start Kevin Durant and have Darius Miles coming off the bench so that you don't have to rush him back, coming back from that injury, then I think that's great. And maybe you can move him mid-season or something like that. But I don't trust LaMarcus Aldridge at center, but I don't like the idea of drafting Greg Oden and then having to ship off Zach Randolph. If you're going to ship off anyone, it should be LaMarcus Aldridge. But the better player right now is Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant next year is going to put up a bare minimum of 18 points a game. I think he's going to put up 21, 22 points a game. And people say that Oden's a better rebounder. Yeah, probably. But Durant was fourth in all of college basketball in rebounding last year. So it's not like you're getting a crummy rebounder. We're talking about a guy that can get a double-double despite the fact that he is just a little bit thicker than Tayshaun, who's a decent rebounder himself in Detroit.
Can Tayshaun bench 185 pounds?
Does he have a ring?
Yeah.
Is he one of the
I'm not trying to
best?
clown him. I'm just asking as a general question. That's all.
I would assume that he can, not very many times.
Okay. I'll take that. Well, I really don't see them moving Zach Randolph if they do draft Greg Oden. I think
that's been the big rumor.
I think if you're gonna draft Greg Oden and you want to compete in the Western Conference, it's better to have two big men who can score than one. Especially when you look at the backups you have. I mean, who has any confidence in Raef LaFrentz? So you've got to make sure that at least one of these guys is on the court the majority of the time. And like you said, I think besides that, they might want to shore up their bench because the guys that are behind the starters here are a joke. Juan Dixon, Martell Webster. I mean, these guys aren't going to see any light. So you might want to use your second pick to get a guard or a shooting guard or point guard that can be an immediate impact off the bench. But besides that, I really don't see them not drafting Kevin Durant, even if he is the better player. They're going to go after Greg Oden. That's where all the hype's been. The whole ESPN, every media outlet's been pushing it. The Trailblazers know that they want to go after him. And the Trailblazers don't want to be that team that passes up on him and picks the bust. And then Seattle gets Greg Oden.
Kevin Durant, the bust?
Any player in this draft has a chance to be a bust. Now, I'm not saying that they don't have the talent to be a star in the NBA, but injury or something bad, and the next thing you know, you have a great guy who had a ton of potential coming out of college who ends up becoming a draft bust because he got hurt.
And I'm glad you brought up injury because guess who has the injury problems? Greg Oden. Kevin Durant doesn't.
But they're not going to.
That's why it's actually the safer pick to go with Kevin Durant.
They're not going to pass up on Greg Oden because he has a bad back and a wrist that he's shown he can play even with that wrist injury. He's had a cast on all last season. He doesn't need to wear one now, so it's not a concern to them. I guess I would say his back was a concern. Maybe if he weighed a little bit more, like if he was Shaq's weight, that would probably be a concern. But I don't think that's going to bother him too much.
I mean, people don't think that the bulging disc is going to be that big of an issue, but it's a reason to not pick Oden, and that's why I think you do it. If Kevin Durant had the same thing, he had a bulging disc or had wrist flexibility problems, then it would be a no-brainer to pick Oden. But they're so close right now that you find one flaw in either one of them, and you pick the safe choice. I think it's a no-brainer as a GM. You don't pick a guy who has a bulging disc. I don't know what can happen with the bulging disc, whether your back, your spinal cord just pops out during the middle of a game or what. But you don't pick the guy with the injury risk. And Greg Oden, he injured his wrist, over 12 months ago and is still not at 100%? It's possibly never going to be 100%. Pick Kevin Durant.
They're not going to pick Durant. I mean, you look at it, like I said, that's according to Portland, that's not a big enough reason. A bulging disc and a wrist injury that's not too bad that he's shown he can play with is not a good enough reason to not pick Greg Oden. Now, if he gets in a car accident on the way to the draft and he's paralyzed, that might be a good enough reason not to pick Greg Oden.
Well, guess who else is on the Kevin Durant bandwagon?
Who?
Joey's
on the Kevin Durant bandwagon.
He recently joined. I talked to him 2 nights ago about it. We were talking about the draft a little bit, and he said that he would now choose Kevin Durant, and I will give you his reasoning right after the break. Plus, we'll get to the other teams in the top 5 plus the rest of the lottery, as well as that Turner Award interview later on in the program. You're listening to Crashing the Boards right here on Com Radio.